She said it the way you mentioned traffic. They were eating dinner, pasta she'd made, the kind she made when she was in a good mood, and she was telling him about her day, and somewhere between the story about her coworker and the thing that happened at the coffee place, she said it. "Oh, and Marcus, you know how he is, he started calling me wifey. It's just a joke, he's so ridiculous." She laughed. Small, fond. The laugh you give a person who has been amusing you for long enough that the amusement has become comfortable. Joel put his fork down, not dramatically. Just set it on the edge of the plate with the particular quietness of someone who needs both hands free to think. She was still talking. The story moved on. Marcus had also said something else. Something about a restaurant they should all go to sometime, wasn't that funny? And Joel listened to the shape of the conversation without quite hearing the words, the way you listen to music in another room. Wifey, he turned the word over, not with anger, not yet, just with the careful attention of someone trying to understand the actual dimensions of a thing before deciding how to respond to it. The word had a history, which was the problem. Not between Joel and Marcus specifically. Joel had met him 4 times, had found him the kind of loud that performs warmth without quite producing it. But the word itself had a function, and that function was not comedy. You didn't call someone's girlfriend wifey as a joke. You called her that as a negotiation, a small deniable staking of ground, a way of saying something and leaving the exit of it's just a joke open enough to walk through if challenged. And she had heard it enough times for it to have become a story she was telling at dinner, had filed it under ridiculous rather than unacceptable, which told Joel something about the distance between what she tolerated from Marcus and what she expected him to tolerate about Marcus. He picked his fork back up. He finished dinner. He asked her about the restaurant Marcus had mentioned. He cleared the plates. She did not notice that anything had changed. He started in the bedroom. She was on the couch with her phone when he came out with the first armful, books mostly, the stack from the nightstand, a charger, a pair of shoes he kept by the wardrobe. He set them near the front door with the economy of someone doing a task rather than making a statement. She looked up. "What are you doing?" He went back to the bedroom without answering. Not to be cruel. He just didn't have the sentence yet, and he'd learned over the years that speaking before the sentence was ready produced more confusion than silence. She came to the doorway. He was taking shirts from the wardrobe, folding them with the practiced neatness of someone who had moved enough times to have the method down. Joel. He looked at her. She was standing in the doorframe with her phone still in her hand and an expression that had not yet decided what it was, somewhere between concerned and defensive, tilting. It was a joke, she said, preemptively, filling the space before he could put something else in it. "I know that's how you heard it," he said. He went back to folding. She stood there for a moment, recalibrating. The response hadn't been what she'd prepared for. She'd been ready for an argument, had a version of it half-assembled already, the architecture of her defense erected against the structure of an accusation. But he hadn't accused. He'd said something quieter and less arguable than an accusation, and it sat in the room without giving her anything to push against. "So what are you doing?" He looked around the room. At the wardrobe, now about 2/3 his. At the nightstand, cleared. At the corner where his gym bag lived. "Packing," he said, which she could see. But sometimes the plainest answer is the only honest one. She argued. Of course she argued. Not cruelly. She wasn't cruel, that wasn't the problem. She was skilled at the particular argument that reframes the other person's reaction as the issue rather than the thing that produced it. "You're overreacting. You don't even know him like I do. You're making this about something it isn't." Joel listened to all of it. He listened carefully the way he did most things, and he heard in it not malice but a kind of genuine confusion, the confusion of someone who had let something go on long enough that they'd stopped being able to see it clearly. He didn't say much. He acknowledged what she said without agreeing with it, which is a skill that takes years to develop, and which, he noticed, seemed to frustrate her more than disagreement would have. At some point, she went back to the couch. At some point he heard her on the phone. He couldn't hear the words from the bedroom, just the tone, the low, careful register of someone managing a situation. She was calling Marcus. He understood this without having to confirm it. She was calling Marcus to come over and explain himself, to be charming and self-deprecating, and to demonstrate in person that the nickname was nothing, that Joel was misreading something simple, that the air could be cleared with the right conversation in the right room. Joel set a stack of clothes in his bag and zipped it part way. He was not surprised. He was not angry. He was something colder and more final than either. Marcus arrived 40 minutes later. Joel heard the knock, heard her cross the apartment, heard the door open, and the particular uptick in her voice that happened when she was performing ease she didn't quite feel. He came out of the bedroom. Marcus was what Joel remembered. Broad, comfortable in his own presence. The kind of man who filled a room by behaving as though the room had been waiting for him. He was dressed like someone who'd been called away from something more interesting and had come anyway as a favor. He saw Joel and recalibrated. The apartment was not what he'd been briefed to expect. Joel stood in the hallway between the bedroom and the living area, and behind him, visible from the doorway, were 2 bags, a box, and a cleared shelf. The detritus of departure. The apartment had the quality of a place in the middle of a process, not a place waiting for a conversation to smooth something over. Marcus looked at the bags, looked at Joel. Joel said, "Come in." His voice was entirely normal. This was, somehow, more disorienting than if it hadn't been. Marcus came in, took the seat he was gestured toward. She hovered slightly, near the kitchen, not quite sitting, holding a glass of water she wasn't drinking. Joel sat across from Marcus. He didn't perform relaxation. He simply was relaxed in the way of someone who has already resolved the primary question and is now engaged in a secondary one. He said, "I appreciate you coming." Marcus said something about, of course, no problem, happy to clear things up. Joel nodded. "I want to ask you something," he said, "and I'd like an honest answer rather than a comfortable one." Marcus said, "Sure, of course." "When you use that word," Joel said, "do you think it's a joke?" The room went very still. Marcus opened his mouth. The comfortable answer was already there. "Obviously, man, it's just a thing I say. I didn't mean anything by it." Joel could see it assemble behind his eyes, ready for delivery. But something in the quality of the question, or in the quality of the room, or in the presence of those bags visible through the hallway, made him hesitate. The hesitation was the answer. Joel let it sit for a moment. Then he said, quietly, without heat, "I think you know what it means. I think you've known for a while." He wasn't performing. There was no satisfaction in his voice, no edge sharpened for this moment. He spoke the way you state a fact that doesn't require your emotion to make it true. Marcus said nothing. She, from the kitchen, said his name, Joel, in the tone of someone hoping to change the subject by changing the register. Joel stood. "I'm going to finish," he said, to both of them, to neither. Just to the room. He went back to the bedroom. He came out twice. First trip, the 2 bags and the box. He moved past them without ceremony, set them by the door, went back. Second trip, his jacket, his keys, his phone from the charger on the kitchen counter. She was standing near the door now, not blocking it. She wasn't that kind of person, and this wasn't that kind of scene. Just standing near it. Present. Still hoping in the way people hope when they've run out of arguments, but not out of wanting. Marcus was still on the couch. Joel didn't look at him. He looked at her. She looked like herself, which sounds like a nothing observation, but wasn't. She looked entirely like the person he loved, which was the complicated part, the part that didn't simplify no matter how clearly he saw everything else. People are not made simpler by disappointing you. They stay exactly as complex and familiar as they were, and you have to hold all of it at once. He held it. Then he picked up his bags. "I'm not angry at you," he said. Which was true, and which he thought she deserved to hear. "But I can't stay in something where this is just a joke." She didn't say anything. Her expression was doing several things at once. He opened the door. The elevator was slow, as it always was. He stood in the hallway with his bags and waited, and while he waited, he noticed he was breathing carefully, the way you breathe when you're keeping something at a manageable distance. not suppressing it, just spacing it out. The elevator arrived, he wrote it down. Crossed the lobby, pushed through the main door into the evening air, which was cool and smelled like the city and was indifferent to everything he was carrying. He stood on the pavement for a moment. He thought about her, about Marcus on the couch with the comfortable answer he'd been unable to deliver, about the specific quality of a room when something has already been decided and everyone in it knows it except the people who aren't ready to know it. He thought about the word, wifey, the smallness of it, the way small things, said often enough, become the truth of something. A cab came down the street and he raised his hand and it stopped. He put his bags in and got in after them and gave his friend's address because that was the next thing. And the next thing was enough for now. The city moved past the window. He was not happy. He was not righteous. He was a man with 2 bags and a cleared shelf, and the uncomfortable, necessary feeling of someone who has finally done the thing they knew they needed to do and must now wait to find out what that costs. It would cost something. It always did. He watched the city and let that be true.